thank you to Jerome Kleiss for a wonderful invitation and a lovely town. And I apologize to Robert Gulstrand for pinching the title of one of his seminal papers. But unfortunately that's the only Swedish I can express, so I'll switch to the English. And once again, I have no financial disclosures, except of course what Johannes mentioned, that I do benefit from doing these treatments. I'm going to, this is rehashing what has been said many times, I'm not going to spend too long. Basically, it's all a compromise, isn't it? And we have to educate our patients well, select our patients well, and deliver that solution as well as we can. That's the UK population pyramid. The way it works is that the baby boomers are the ones which we are concentrating on. Left and right are males and females. Each decade is represented there, and as you can see in the developed population, there's usually as many people in their 50s as there are as children, and that's that baby boom population. We're looking for solutions, and that's what we're trying to address with imperfect tools. The corneal solutions, these are all corneal, obviously we're addressing the cornea, back to the cornea, we're out of the lens at the moment, but Monovision is an option, Presbyopic LASIK is an option, which this is the Schwint variation. Yeah, so in terms of that, there's also there's the hyperprolate aspheric approach, and there's the multifocal type approach. Blended Monovision, as we heard from Kleiss, is the variation of the aspheric approach. And we have corneal inlays, which I'll speak about later. Intracor was a previous procedure which is seldom used now. And conductive keratoplasty was an interesting variant and produced a hyperprolate cornea. But we're talking about Supracor today, and again, very much like the Presbymax. A lot of what Presbymax is about is translatable to the Supracor, and this is the other end of the spectrum to what Klaus Ditzen was talking about, where we get a hyperprolate or hyperprolate. We took dealing with asphericity. So we have a centinear approach with intermediate beyond that, and the peripheral corneas for the distance. Looking at a topography map, that's what you'll see. You'll see the center slightly raised in the centinear approach. Marsh and Loeb, who market this, they're trying to pitch the Intracor for the emmetropic patients. So the Supracor is designed for the myopes and the hyperopes, and at this stage, it's released in the UK. It's only available for the hyperopes. The inclusion criteria are, as you know, for all of these compromises, they involve realistic expectations, be careful of night vision problems. Patients need to be available, LASIK suitable, and it's low astigmatism. However, the optical zone on the Supracor is 6 millimeters, and it's set as standard. And again, this is one of the things which Jerome was talking about. We are constrained by the technology that's offered to us as surgeons, and sometimes this should be more customizable. So in our study, we looked at 109 eyes and 55 patients with more than a month follow-up. Obviously, the ones with the longer follow-up, there were less of them. There were different surgeons and different clinics. The age range was all in the presbyopic range, mainly female, which is quite common amongst the patients seeking this treatment. And it was in the low emmetropic to low hyperopic range, with low astigmatism and good vision. It's not a good slide, I'm sorry that it's depicted well. Essentially, all the patients became low myopes, very much like the Presbymax after treatment. But that does diminish with time, and the early indications are that the patients at about 6 months, and most of them do regress back up towards emmetropia at the 6 month stage, but that data is not available in this presentation. And accordingly, the visual acuity goes in tandem with the low myopia. The VAR scale is invested log 100 is 6/6. So these patients all have slightly reduced distance and corrected distance visual acuity. Looking at the unaided distance vision, you can see that if you pick one of the target levels, say 20 over 25, you can see at the 1 month to 3 month level, the distance visual acuity starts to improve. And the near vision, interestingly, if you look at take for instance the N5 level, at about between 1 month and 3 months, the near vision continues to improve. And there seems to be some sort of either modification of the corneal surface or the ability of the binocular visual system to assimilate the data better. So preoperatively, we had the uncorrected distance visual acuity was on average 6/12, with poor near vision of N16, which is why they came to see us, and these were, as you can see, low hyperopes. After 3 months, the uncorrected distance visual acuity was better, but it was still reduced because the patients had low myopia, but their near vision was very good. And as you can see, that's reflected also in the spherical equivalent. They're all about minus 0.5. In terms of patient satisfaction, the way we rated them, there are 5 categories. CBB stands for couldn't be better. These patients are very, very happy. PWR is pleased with the result. They're also very happy. Then you have the satisfied patients. They're not too excited, and a lot of the British population should be like that, but unfortunately a lot of them are happier than that. H4B is the undissatisfied group. That's hope for better. And then you get regret having had it. None of the patients regretted having had it. About 92% of the patients were in the category of satisfied or better. But trying to get comparative studies, there's no published data on Supracor in the peer-reviewed literature, but Chobard has produced a white paper, and his results are very similar to ours in terms of all the parameters. What was interesting, if you look at the bottom of best uncorrected distance visual acuity, better than 6 out of 7.5. At 3 months, we had 78%, we had 75%, very similar, but at 6 months, the 96% for him. So there does seem to be something that happens with these patients between the 3 and 6 month stage, and that seems to be related to regression of the myopia back towards hypertropia. So there's a myopic shift which seems to improve over 3 months. There's improved uncorrected visual acuity and reduced uncorrected distance visual acuity in our patients. There were many happy patients, with 84% of the patients, but 8% were unhappy. In terms of tips for success with Supracor, again, as I said before, the good patient selection and counseling, especially regarding the myopic shift, is critical. You must tell the patients they will be myopic, and that's going to be for 6 months. And that's a difficult thing to try and convince the patients of in the early stages, preoperatively, I mean. Good centration is important, and that's an easy way of saying, of glossing out a very complex subject. What is the centration? Where should the centration be? We've touched on that in a number of the talks. Monovision is probably a good idea for the suitable patient, especially for the women, interestingly. As Frank said, that the women seem to want better near vision, and that's been my experience. So I do offer Monovision to them, and I'm cautious about it with the men because they really want the good distance vision. And the patients must be Monovision tolerant. My impressions of the treatment are that the results depend on many factors. The centration, what do? Do you go on the visual axis? Do you go on the line of sight, which is the pupil center, or is there a compromise? What do you do about angle kappa? Should you adjust by angle kappa? The way I did it, and it's unfortunately very empiric, it's not very scientific at all, was that if the angle kappa was between 5 to 10 degrees, I tended to shift the treatment center slightly from the line of sight, from the visual axis. From the line of sight towards the visual axis, slightly, about halfway. The other factors that are important, but we need studies on this. We need to be able to customize this approach, and we need to know to what proportion each of these criteria should be considered in the customization of the approach for each patient. Unfortunately, we're realizing more and more that one shoe doesn't fit all, and the problem is we don't know how much value to attribute to each of the factors we need to adjust in individual patients. So, is there a difference between myopic and hyperopic patients, especially in terms of different zones? Should we be doing, we all know about the old days of affectable optical zones with the treatments we were doing, and we do a 6 millimeter zone for a hyperope. The actual curvature difference which we're inducing in the center is going to be very different to a myope with a 6 millimeter zone. We're constrained by 6 millimeters with the Supracor. The pupil size, the pupil dynamics are important. These patients are expecting to see well over all those scotopic, photopic, mesopic pupil ranges, but they're not going to. Is that pupil dilating concentrically or eccentrically, and should we be taking that into consideration? Of course, we age, so we treat these patients now, we measure very nicely their accommodation, we measure all these different factors, and then what happens? The lens becomes more aspheric, the pupil size changes, the tear film changes, all of these factors change, and we've gone and set this treatment for this patient at this time of their lives, and how much should we be able to adapt our technique slightly for something that's going to happen? We can predict in the future it's going to vary by a certain degree, and so therefore to prolong the benefit of this treatment for that individual patient. And of course, environmental factors, you can imagine, if you're driving in Spain in August, got a pupil which is probably down at 2 or 3 millimeters, but if you drive in Sweden in December, you might have a 5 or 6 millimeter pupil in the same patient, and that patient's going to have a very different experience. And we've got to take these things into consideration. Again, the expectations of the patient are important, and what can that technology achieve in that patient. We need to be able to evaluate the patient's needs and wants. What's that patient's personality? Are they fastidious with high expectations? And then cognitive dissonance is another nice way of saying you talk till you're blue in the face with some patients and they just don't get it, and they come back and they complain. So no matter what you say, they nod their heads wisely, just as Simpson did in that lie detector test we saw earlier, John's, he says, yes, I get it, and then the machine explodes because he obviously didn't. So that's the problem we have. My particular experience, I have 3 dissatisfied patients that I'd like to say that none of them are mine, they're the other surgeons. Of course they never real patients. One of them is a 58-year-old sailor, and he has a slightly decentered Supracor treatment, and he's miserable. He says, and it's, as Frank said, he's a man, he wants to see well in the distance, he wants to see those harbour lights, he wants to line up his boat at night to come to the harbour, and he says he sees these lights scattered all over the place and he just can't see them clearly. He is miserable. I've had to retreat the one eye, and I've significantly reduced the aberrations and improved the matters considerably, but not perfectly for him yet, and I haven't tackled the other eye yet. There's a 53-year-old secretary. She's, interesting, as Frank said, a woman, and she's not happy with her near vision. It didn't give her enough, and she's complaining. And then progressive presbyopia. I had one patient who was treated earlier, a couple of years ago, and unfortunately, she's lost a little bit of her near vision. She says, this isn't achieving what I was hoping to do. And as you said, Jerome, it's a black box. I can do, with this particular thing, I can do one set. I cannot customize it to different degrees of presbyopic correction and different degrees of depth of field. I can merely treat a set thing. And then after that, my only tool in my toolbox is then to increase the monovision and to increase the myopic effect in the non-dominant eye. So my impressions are, further in terms of my impressions, I'm concerned about reversal of the Supracor. The issue there is that the treatment is centered on the pupil center, but the pupil center can change with time, and also the treatment center can be deviated. So the question is, if I inherit a patient from another surgeon, and that surgeon hasn't documented where they center the pupil center, and the wavefront analysis is not, and perhaps the wavefront analysis is not accurate enough to tell the laser where I'm centered the subsequent treatment, or where the raised area is for the reading ad, this will be difficult. So we need higher resolution wavefront analyzers, and we also need to know where that previous treatment was done to have good reversals. This is for the Supracor treatment. As Johan said, for Presbymania it's different. It's centered on the corneal vertex usually, unless, as Johan has done, he's shifted it slightly, so then subsequent surgeon will need to know Johan shifted it. But for at least the corneal vertex stays constant. The pupil center, unfortunately, Supracor doesn't stay constant. So these are all factors which you have to consider in the reversals. So as I said right at the beginning, all the current solutions are compromises. We need to find the best solution for each patient, education patient one, and deliver solution one, and that's very easy to say, but there's a vast amount that goes behind that. So thank you very much.